Long before a supermarket tomato was bred to survive a truck, garden vegetables were selected for other reasons. A bean had to dry well in the pod, a cabbage had to wait in a cellar, a squash had to keep through winter. A tomato might be valued because one family loved its flavor, even if its skin bruised too easily for a shipping warehouse. Amish gardeners did not preserve all of these crops alone, and not every Amish garden contains them. Seed-saving traditions belong to indigenous peoples, immigrant communities, market gardeners, religious groups, and countless families. Some varieties associated with Amish or Pennsylvania German communities have uncertain histories despite confident catalog stories. The accurate lesson is broader. Gardens preserve diversity when people continue growing, selecting, eating, and sharing seed. Here are 15 vegetables and vegetable types that show why an old garden could be more resilient than an aisle of nearly identical packets. Now, I want you to sit with this. There is no magic hidden in the word heirloom. There never was. An old seed earns its place the same way a new one should. It grows in your ground, survives your weather, feeds your table, and leaves a sound beginning for next year. And here is the part that ought to make you uneasy. A seed company can sell us a fresh packet every spring, but the larger loss comes when flavor, local adaptation, and the knowledge of selection disappear together. The packet is cheap. Rebuilding a vanished variety is impossible. My name is Amos. I am Amish, and my family has planted and saved garden seed for 4 generations down in Ohio country. My grandfather kept bean seed in a blue glass jar above the cellar steps. He never saved from the weakest plant left standing. He tied a rag around the strongest while it was still heavy with pods, because tomorrow deserves the best part too. We will meet paste tomatoes, brandywine types, ground cherries, storage cabbage, pole and greasy beans, shell and lima beans, pie pumpkins, winter squash, mangels, salsify, parsnips, garlic, and winter radish. Then I will show you selection, isolation, storage, honest exchange, and a small garden plan. Stay with me. Number 1. Amish Paste tomato. This famous elongated tomato is valued for sauce and canning because it is meaty with fewer watery cavities than many slicing tomatoes. Its exact origin story is often linked to Amish communities in Wisconsin, though seed histories can become simplified as varieties move between families and catalogs. Its importance is practical. A paste tomato reduces the time and fuel needed to cook sauce down. It can also be sliced fresh. One variety serves both preservation and summer meals. Like most tomatoes, it is usually self-pollinating, but can cross under some conditions. Seed savers select fully ripe fruit from healthy, typical plants, ferment the seed briefly to remove the gelatinous coating, rinse, dry thoroughly, and label the year. Disease carried on seed and accidental crossing remain concerns, so reliable guidance matters. Number 2. Brandywine-type tomatoes. Brandywine became an icon of heirloom flavor, with several strains and tangled stories attached to Amish or Pennsylvania origins. Large pink fruit can be extraordinary at the table, but plants may yield less uniformly, and fruits may crack or bruise. This is exactly why home gardens matter. A variety that performs poorly in industrial distribution can remain valuable when the distance from vine to plate is 30 feet. Number 3. Ground cherries. Wrapped in papery husks, ground cherries fall when ripe and can be eaten fresh or cooked into preserves and pies. They are related to tomatoes, but occupy a different culinary space, sweet, tart, and storable for a time in their protective husks. The plant often self-sows, turning one year's forgotten fruit into next year's volunteers. That can be a gift or a weed problem. A resilient garden includes crops that participate in their own return, but still requires the gardener to decide where they belong. Number 4. Winter storage cabbage. Not one romantic named variety, but a class selected for dense heads and keeping quality. Tender early cabbage is valuable in summer. Storage cabbage sacrifices some delicacy to endure cooler months in suitable conditions. It can become slaw, cooked cabbage, soup, or fermented sauerkraut. Cabbage is biennial. Saving seed usually means overwintering selected plants or heads, then allowing them to flower in the second year. They cross readily with other members of the same Brassica oleracea species, including kale, broccoli, cauliflower, and Brussels sprouts. Preserving true seed therefore requires isolation and planning far beyond letting one plant bolt. Number 5. Old pole beans. Pole beans trade the labor of building support for a long vertical harvest. In a small garden, they turn fence and airspace into production. Some varieties are eaten as snap beans when young, others mature into dry beans. A dual-purpose bean offers flexibility when the household has more fresh beans than it can eat. Beans are generally approachable for seed saving because many are primarily self-pollinating, though crossing can occur. Pods intended for seed remain on the plant until dry and brittle if weather permits. The best seed comes from healthy plants, not merely the last neglected pods. Number 6. Greasy beans. Appalachian greasy beans are named for smooth, shiny pods rather than actual grease. They are not exclusively Amish, but they illustrate the kind of regional quality nearly lost when markets standardized around uniform green beans. Many have strings and require preparation, yet cooks prize their texture and rich flavor. Convenience removed the string. It sometimes removed character with it. A home gardener can choose whether the extra minute at the table is worth the difference. Number 7. Horticultural or shell beans. These beans are harvested when seeds have filled out but remain tender or allowed to dry completely. Speckled seeds, creamy textures, and regional names connect varieties to particular kitchens. They bridge the gap between summer vegetable and winter staple. Their great resilience is timing. If weather or schedule prevents harvest at the fresh shell stage, many can continue toward dry storage rather than becoming instant waste. Number 8. Lima beans adapted to the north. Large tropical-looking limas can struggle in shorter seasons, but smaller or earlier strains allow gardeners in cooler regions to produce buttery beans. Variety choice turns an impossible crop into a reliable one. This is the hidden value of local seed. It carries generations of selection for a place. Saving seed from plants that mature earliest can gradually reinforce suitability, though maintaining enough plants helps preserve genetic health. Number 9. Pie pumpkins. The best pumpkin for a porch is not always the best pumpkin for the oven. Pie types emphasize dense, sweet flesh and manageable size. They roast more efficiently, puree smoothly, and can become soup, bread, custard, or feed in some farm systems. Pumpkins and squash cross within their species, sometimes across varieties that look very different. A zucchini and certain pumpkins may share a species and exchange pollen. The resulting fruit this year remains normal. The surprise appears in next year's seed. Hand pollination and flower isolation are useful when purity matters. Number 10. Long-keeping winter squash. Hubbard, butternut, cushaw, and other types vary in species, flavor, and storage. Properly matured fruit with cured skins can provide food long after frost. The stem remains attached, bruises are avoided, and damaged fruit is used first. Storage is not passive. Squash should be checked regularly. One soft spot can spread. The old cellar survived because someone walked through it, touched food, and changed the order of use. Number 11. Mangel beets. Mangels are large beets historically grown, especially for livestock fodder, though young roots or leaves have sometimes been used by people depending on variety and tradition. They can produce impressive weight in a small area and store under suitable conditions. Their lesson is whole farm planning. Not every garden crop must become a fashionable human side dish. A crop that carries animal feed into winter can preserve more expensive grain and indirectly support milk, eggs, manure, or draft power. Number 12. Salsify. Sometimes called oyster plant, salsify produces a long root with a subtle flavor and can remain in the ground into cool weather in suitable climates. It lost ground to easier, more familiar vegetables, partly because long roots demand deep, loose soil and careful digging. Forgotten does not always mean superior. Some crops vanished because they were inconvenient. The reason to revisit them is to evaluate which inconvenience may now be acceptable in exchange for winter harvest, diversity, or taste. Number 13. Parsnips. Parsnips can become sweeter after cold and can remain in the soil under appropriate conditions, giving the garden a living winter pantry. Their seed loses viability relatively quickly compared with many staples, so fresh seed and careful germination conditions matter. They teach patience twice. Seedlings can be slow to emerge, and flavor improves after a long season. A supply chain optimized for speed undervalues crops whose advantage is waiting. Number 14. German extra hardy garlic and other locally maintained garlic strains. Garlic is generally propagated by cloves rather than true seed, so each planted clove continues a selected line. Hardneck types can handle cold climates and produce scapes as an early secondary crop. Bulbs must be cured with airflow and protected from moisture. Saving the largest healthy cloves for planting creates a tension. The best food is also the best future seed. A household that eats every perfect bulb consumes its next improvement. Traditional seed systems reserve quality for tomorrow. Number 15. Winter radish. Daikon and European winter radishes can grow much larger than spring salad radishes, tolerate cool weather, and store for a time under proper conditions. They offer crunch, pickling, cooked uses, and fresh food late in the season. Radishes are insect-pollinated and cross with other varieties of the same species. Seed pods must mature and dry, turning a quick root crop into a much longer commitment when seed is the goal. These 15 examples share 4 kinds of resilience. The first is culinary range, a crop that can be eaten fresh, preserved, dried, fermented, fed to animals, or stored whole, gives the household choices. When summer becomes too busy for canning, a bean can dry. When a squash is damaged, it can be cooked first. The second is seasonal range. Early greens, summer tomatoes, autumn roots, winter squash, and cellar cabbage spread risk across weather. A single hailstorm or drought does not strike every crop at the same stage. The third is genetic range. Modern agriculture benefits enormously from uniformity in planting, harvest, processing, and shipping, but uniform crops can share uniform vulnerabilities. A garden containing several varieties is a small reservoir of different responses to heat, disease, soil, and timing. The fourth is knowledge. Seed without the story of how to grow, select, isolate, cook, and store it is only partial inheritance. This is why seed saving begins with records. Write the variety, source, planting date, observations, selected plants, isolation method, harvest date, and year. Labels that say red bean are how diversity disappears into confusion. Selection should serve a goal. Choose the earliest tomato from a healthy early plant if short seasons are the problem. Choose beans from vigorous plants that resisted local disease. Choose squash that matured fully and stored well. Do not save seed only from the final survivors after the best produce has been eaten. That may unintentionally select lateness or poor quality. Population size matters. Tomatoes and beans can often be maintained from relatively few plants more easily than wind-pollinated corn or cross-pollinating brassicas, which benefit from larger populations to avoid inbreeding and preserve diversity. Serious seed savers consult crop-specific guidance instead of applying one envelope method to every species. So does isolation, distance, timing, cages, blossom bags, or hand pollination can prevent unwanted crosses, depending on crop. The right method for a tomato is not the right method for squash or cabbage. Then, storage must protect dry seed from heat, moisture, light, and pests. Seed should be truly dry before sealing. Labels go inside and outside when the collection matters. Germination tests reveal when an older lot needs refreshing. The social part may be most important. One household can lose a variety through illness, flood, mice, a missed season, or a mislabeled jar. When several gardeners grow and exchange the same seed, the variety gains backups. A seed library, swap, neighbor network, or regional organization performs the same function once carried by extended families. But sharing requires accuracy. Never rename a crossed or uncertain seed as a famous heirloom. Describe what happened. An honest, locally adapted line can be valuable without borrowing a legendary identity. Before buying 15 packets, begin with 3 crops your household already eats. Add 1 storage variety, 1 unusual flavor variety, and 1 locally adapted seed from a trustworthy source. Grow enough plants. Take notes. Save seed only where isolation is manageable. Learn 1 crop deeply. Imagine applying that advice to a garden measuring only 20 by 30 feet. The gardener chooses 1 paste tomato, 1 pole bean, 1 winter squash, 1 storage cabbage, 1 parsnip, and 1 winter radish. 6 crops are enough to reveal nearly every challenge in the seed-saving system: self-pollination, insect pollination, crossing, biennial growth, vertical space, long roots, storage, and preservation. The plot is mapped before planting. Pole beans climb the north side, where their trellis will not shade shorter crops. Tomatoes receive airflow and enough space to inspect disease. Squash is directed along an edge or sturdy support, appropriate to its fruit. Roots occupy deep, loosened beds, free of fresh manure that could distort them. Cabbage receives netting or other locally appropriate pest management, rather than being abandoned after the first caterpillar. But seed saving changes the map. 1 squash variety can be hand-pollinated and protected more easily than attempting to isolate an entire neighborhood. Cabbage seed is postponed because keeping enough plants through winter and preventing crosses may exceed the beginner's capacity. Purchased cabbage seed is not failure. Knowing which preservation job belongs to someone else is sound stewardship. The paste tomatoes become the first seed project. Several vigorous plants are observed, not just 1. The gardener marks fruit from plants that combine health, useful shape, productivity, and flavor. A giant odd fruit on a weak plant is eaten, not chosen as the entire future. The beans become the second. Some pods are marked early and left untouched for seed, ensuring the best plants are not harvested bare. Wet autumn weather can make drying difficult. Pods may need to finish under protected airflow once mature enough. Seeds are inspected for damage and dried before storage. The squash receives controlled pollination. In the evening, male and female blossoms likely to open the next morning are identified and temporarily secured from insects. In the morning, pollen from the chosen male is transferred to the chosen female, which is closed and labeled. Methods vary, and secure technique matters. The fruit remains on the plant to full maturity and may require additional curing before seed removal. This labor explains why genuine seed costs more than a random envelope of unknown crosses. Purity and selection are services. During summer, records capture more than yield. Which tomato cracked after rain? Which bean continued through heat? Which squash resisted vine problems? Which cabbage attracted the least damage? Which root bed held moisture? A variety that wins a catalog beauty contest may lose in the actual yard. Harvest creates separate streams. Perfect fresh produce enters meals. Sound surplus enters safe preservation. Mature marked specimens enter seed work. Damaged but usable produce is cooked promptly. Disease material is handled according to the disease and local guidance rather than casually returned to compost. This sorting prevents seed specimens from being eaten and prevents rotten produce from contaminating storage. The storage crops each receive conditions rather than one generic seller. Cabbage prefers a different humidity and airflow profile from onions. Apples can release ethylene and odors that affect nearby produce. Squash generally prefers warmer, drier storage than potatoes. Roots may be packed or held according to proven regional methods. The old cellar is a collection of microclimates managed through placement. A modern household can imitate this on a small scale, with an unheated but frost-safe room, refrigerator zones, insulated containers, or other monitored spaces depending on climate. A cheap thermometer and humidity meter reveal whether the romantic corner actually matches the crop. Every week, stored food is inspected. The order of use changes as stems soften, spots appear, or roots begin losing quality. Preservation is active inventory, not burial. In the kitchen, the 6 crops must prove their value. Paste tomatoes become fresh slices, sauce, and a tested canned product if the household cans. Pole beans are eaten young, then later shelled or dried depending on type. Squash appears roasted, in soup, and in bread. Cabbage becomes slaw, cooked dishes, and perhaps fermentation through a validated method. Parsnips roast and enrich stew. Winter radish appears raw, pickled under a safe recipe, or cooked. If no one enjoys 3 of those uses, the variety may not deserve scarce garden space next year. Heritage is kept alive by appetite, not obligation. Winter records close the loop. Total harvest weight is useful, but so are weeks of availability, meals produced, seed successfully stored, labor, pest pressure, and waste. A lower-yielding squash that stores until February may outperform a giant producer that rots in October. Next year's selection then becomes local. The earliest healthy tomato seed returns. Beans that performed through the specific summer return. A purchased new variety may enter as a trial beside the established one. The garden remains open to improvement while carrying memory. Seed exchange adds a quarantine mindset. New seed is labeled with source and grown in a way that allows observation. Claims of disease resistance or purity are not treated as guarantees. Saved seed is shared with an honest description of isolation and any suspected crossing. Trust grows through accurate uncertainty. There is a legal and ecological boundary too. Gardeners should not collect seed from protected wild plants or introduce invasive crops. Patented or contract-restricted commercial seed may carry legal limits. Heirloom enthusiasm does not override land stewardship or agreements. Nor should every old variety be released without considering disease. Seed-borne pathogens can travel with generosity. Regional extension services, seed organizations, and crop-specific sanitation guidance help prevent a swap from spreading a problem across gardens. The deeper contrast is between a seed as product and a seed as relationship. A product is purchased, opened, and consumed. A relationship demands observation, selection, storage, and truthful exchange. It improves only when both sides, the plant and the gardener, respond to each other over time. For families, one seed crop can teach this without turning the yard into a laboratory. Beans are often a manageable beginning. Children can mark pods, hear dry seeds rattle, count them, label envelopes, and plant a portion next year. The lesson is concrete. Dinner and next summer came from the same plant, and eating everything would have erased the future. That lesson once belonged to ordinary survival. Today, it can also protect agricultural diversity no supermarket can display in one aisle. At the end of the season, place 2 plates on the table, the standard variety and the old one. Taste them blind. Compare yield, disease, labor, cooking, storage, and whether anyone actually asks to eat it again. Preservation should not become worship of age. The best reason to keep a vegetable is that it remains alive in the kitchen. In late winter, the garden appears empty, yet on a pantry shelf, beans sleep inside a jar. Garlic waits in the cellar, squash thickens a soup, tiny envelopes hold next summer in a form small enough to lose between 2 books. That is how a vegetable escapes forgetting, not through a catalog description, but through a repeated chain: plant, observe, select, cook, share, and plant again. Tell me where you live and which old vegetable still appears in your family garden. Tell me the variety you remember tasting but can no longer find. I read every single one. The stories you send back are the reason I keep recording. Next time, I will lift the cloth from a rising loaf and show you how a handful of pantry ingredients can make the bread aisle optional. Until then, keep it simple, keep it honest, and keep it homemade. And remember, the people who built this country with their own 2 hands knew things we are only just starting to remember.